back. If you're heading outside today, and the rain has certainly already begun for parts of the greater Toronto area, like here in Oakville, it's a kind of hold your umbrella with two hands kind of day. So, Jaclyn, for anybody heading outside today, ready to take on the rain, be prepared to take on the winds as well.
Hey, at least you only had to pull out the umbrella at the end of your shift, right?
Yeah, that's okay, I guess.
Okay, thanks a lot, Natalie. Great coverage. All right, let's talk about those wind gusts that she was just mentioning. That's in Oakville, Ontario, where you just saw those winds. Toronto, 46 kilometer per hour gusts so far. London at 57, but Gore Bay, so up in the north where we thought really the big part of the story would be, we're already seeing those winds over 80K. And by the way, Kenora getting into some mixed precipitation already. So snowfall watches up to the extreme northwestern parts of Ontario. Suzanne Leonard standing by to talk about not just this storm, but a few storms right across the country. Let's take a look at the squall line. I mean, earlier, the first part of this loop, you can see some thunderstorm activity into the Gulf states. That's that typical kind of squall line that sets up right along a cold front boundary. Pretty incredible, though, to see how big it is. Heavy rain in the yellows. You can see right through the spine of southern Ontario, through Owen Sound, all the way down to, maybe Long Point at this point, some heavy rain. So let's get into a closer view there. You can see the building cloud, as you just saw Natalie outside. You can see it's now cloudy. Maybe this morning you woke up to sunshine like I did. I went out for a beautiful run and it felt like summer. It's not going to feel like that tomorrow or Sunday through Ontario. There's the heavy rain bands we're watching. Winds are actually starting to see some clearing. And just a note, just by looking at those winds in Windsor, make sure if you have any patio furniture out there still from the summer, get rid of it. I was driving by a restaurant in Ancaster where I live, and they have all these tents out over this beautiful fine dining restaurant. Really be careful, folks. We're going to have winds that are going to be gusting at around 60K, maybe 70K throughout the day. So let's get into our cloud tops. Not a lot has changed in terms of the track of the storm from yesterday to today. If you've been watching the show, you know that there's heavy rain and snow reported in Kenora right now. We have some mixing that far south, and also some heavy rain through the London area, right up through Owen Sound. Pretty impressive squall line all the way down into the States. But there's the heaviest rain. So Wyerton, just west of London, now pushing into Hamilton, and the winds are, part of the story. The heavy rain is the other part of the story, and we're going to have more on the BC storm, which is also going to be a big rainmaker. Suzanne Leonard standing by to talk to you about that. This morning, winds were out of the southeast. If we play this as that cold front moves through by this evening and into Saturday, very unsettled kind of weather. Very strong winds, especially along the shorelines. Suzanne, we're looking at winds, easily 70 to 80K through, the Lake Huron region and those that live right close to the shoreline. But inland, maybe not quite as bad. I know my brother asked me, what's going on for Muskoka? Well, 40, 50K, definitely possible. Can't thank you enough for all the tweets and updates from our viewers that are seeing some pretty dark skies moving in their region, particularly if you live in Brampton. Here's a tweet from Coralie Carter. She tweeted, the Weather Network said, very heavy rain in North Brampton started around 2. It's coming down in buckets. Winds have subsided a little bit for now. And then another tweet from Romana. Here comes the rain in Vaughan and the Concord area. And then Ashley King, she says, is anyone else dumbfounded by how big this storm is? It reaches from Hudson Bay all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, #OnStorm. You can connect with us on Twitter all afternoon. Here's a look at the radar. Just as a reminder, we do not issue rainfall warnings, any warnings for that matter. It's Environment Canada that handles all of that. So we have had a few reports. You have people calling in the storm line saying this is really intense rain where I live. Fortunately, we don't actually issue those, so we'll see what comes out from Environment Canada throughout the afternoon. Heavy rain, you can see just back to the west of the GTA now moving through Hamilton. Let's go live to Mark Robinson. Mark, I know you're going to be relocating, but tell us what you're seeing at Brantford. Well, it's Suzanne Leonard and Jaclyn Whittal in the studio, in the newsroom, getting down to the nitty-gritty of the storm. You might be going outside soon, though, Suzanne.
Thanks, Jaclyn. I'm ready for that.
You are ready.
It's raining. I can see that outside. The winds are picking up, so if you're joining us from the GTA, it has begun.
It has begun, no question. We have seen some wind gusts up toward the north, over 80 kilometers per hour. We've also seen snow now mixing down to Kenora. Ooh.
Yeah.
Right? And then, of course, the heavy rain. What a story.
It's been a big story. And, the record for Toronto today would be 18 millimeters. And we may get there, but the winds are continuing to build in with this prefrontal band of rain.
That's right. And it's kind of an interesting day, Suzanne, because I went for a run this morning. I know you were doing some gardening, some sodding. Southeasterly wind, but a beautiful start to the day. But the cloud building in, and now if you live in Brampton, you know that the rain is coming down like in buckets.
It felt very much like summer this morning, but yeah, it's bucketing down. 30 millimeters of rain in the forecast for southern Ontario. Really a moisture-laden system, Jaclyn, but an interesting track.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We're really going to see this start to back up. What I say, back up in time. Instead of going east and getting out of our way, it's going to be moving west, and now actually bringing more precip to Manitoba again.
Yeah, and that would be in the form of a snow mix for some areas. Woo, cold temperatures in the prairies if you're joining us from Western Canada, but this is certainly the big story, and it's typical at this time of year, isn't it?
It is, yeah, that transitional time of year where you have everything from those strong winds, and then as you mentioned, Suzanne, the snow.
Snowfall in the north.
That's
Winter
right.
Storm watches, not for Elliott Lake, for Pickle Lake. So that's well to the north, but a soggy regime, and then expect a blustery and noticeably cooler weekend. And does it feel noticeably cooler yet where you are, Chrissy? It'll be slow.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's take a look at our storm. I mean, look at this. This is impressive through Ontario, but we're not the only ones dealing with a low. Tell us about the one out west.
Yeah, it's a massive plume of moisture. And again, it's a typical autumn storm. 50 to 100 millimeters of rain. Not for Tofino this time around. Temperature about 16 degrees right now. Lovely sunny day.
And a beautiful day for our Atlantic Canada folks. I mean, it's going to be a nice day. Only about 9 degrees, I think, in St. John's, Newfoundland, but clear.
Sunshine.
High pressure dominating for now, but this low is actually spinning off a secondary low, which will then bring some rain to the east.
Are you looking for the sun here in the prairies? Do you know that it was -9 in Edmonton this morning?
Oh.
Local temperatures, more with your forecast next, and we'll be back with more. But it's going to be a slow mover and a real temperature contrast on either side already and through the weekend.
That's right, and I think my focus is I'm going to have to buy both those ladies dinner, I think, coming up for going out and taking the brunt of the storm while I'm inside cozy here. As she mentioned, Suzanne said the winds are out of the south, southeast predominantly in and around the Toronto area. Feeling, pretty mild still, but gusting at about 30 kilometers an hour. St. Catharines, winds picking up there at 45, Hamilton at 36, and Kitchener at 43. Predominantly out of the southeast, but that'll shift once that cold front, and this is the prefrontal rain. You may have heard Mark Robbins say that earlier. Really kind of a big blob of mess. But what I find interesting is this secondary line of rain that's moving through Michigan. So this is likely round one. This is likely the cold front. Notice there's not a single cloud behind there. I find that fascinating. So there's the frontal boundary. As Suzanne mentioned, it really is affecting millions of people from Hudson Bay all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. It's a typical fall storm, really strong winds. And once those winds shift westerly as that cold front passes, expect gusts around the Huron shoreline to easily about 80, 90 K and out of the question. So people that live right on the shore, you want to make sure all of your patio furniture, anything, a shovel, a rake, all put away, because those things could be like lethal weapons when we have winds like that. Non-severe thunderstorm risk potentially today, but what happens is we get that blob of rain, as I just mentioned, where it's not isolated little areas of rain. Usually that kind of hinders our chance for convection. Also, it's quite cloudy outside if you're not getting the rain, so the sun isn't really able to do its job, which is good news. But as Suzanne had mentioned too, if we just go back to the other watch, we have these snowfall watches up toward the north. We'll tell you how long this sticks around. Stay with us.
Well, still close to 20. It's still on the humid side, but it's going to change dramatically for the weekend.
Yes, only rain for us. But if you live in Kenora, you're getting mixed precip right now. So a typical fall kind of storm. The track really hasn't changed much since yesterday, so we're still expecting those very strong winds to take us right through the weekend, and the on and off showers. The heaviest rain happening this afternoon, and it is from about Owen Sound all the way down into, say, Hamilton right now. It's a wide area of rain, but I just want to talk about the north. Sault Ste. Marie, Elliott Lake, Manitoulin Island. Rainfall warning now for you. Most of this will taper off by about 3 p.m. Environment Canada says, and they also say you've already picked up about 40 to 60 millimeters of rain, and our forecast was calling for between 50 and 80. So kudos to our forecasters for nailing that one. All right, St. Catharines, your current winds are at about 45, Toronto at around 30. Look at the size of this system. This squall line bringing some active weather stateside too. We'll talk about more of that. Plus, a look at the radar coming up. Oh, it's so true. Yeah, it is a massive system. And a lot of people, Suzanne, are saying, hey, wait a minute, what storm? Well, if you live in parts of cottage country, maybe you haven't seen anything yet. My brother included, who's being a typical brother with his sister saying, hello, what storm? It's coming, Jason, it's coming. We're watching the cloud tops, as Suzanne just said. It's a massive system. And that rain shield, the outer bands of that rain, is still yet to really make its way through central Ontario. So it's going to be very heavy rain. We had a Twitter follower send the Weather Network a tweet earlier, said it's coming down in buckets in Brampton. Now that's pushed a little further east. But the other interesting part of this story, of course, is the cold air. It's that typical kind of fall storm where you have snow up in the north, you have that mixing line, then you have the heavy rain and the wind. Well, look at these temperatures. Dryden only at 9 degrees. Fort Frances now dropping to 4, where in Niagara Falls it's 24 degrees. Just absolutely gorgeous. I went out for a run this morning just outside of Hamilton, and I thought, this is beautiful. This feels like summer. Not going to feel like that tomorrow. It's going to be very different. All because of our wind shift. So once all of that precip moves in along that frontal boundary, winds will shift westerly, and when they do, not only can we get into some lake effect rain, not snow, thank goodness, lake effect rain, but we're going to see a drop in our temperatures. I think I heard it said best earlier by one of our meteorologists. If you have a gust of wind at around 60 km and it's 24 degrees out, that's not too bad. We can deal with that. Now, if you have that same wind gust, but it's 10 degrees or 8 degrees or 7 degrees, you're not as happy walking down the street. It's a little bit more raw. Seen 40 to 60 millimeters through a lot of those areas. Winter storm watch, though, for Pickle Lake. Still could be getting into some snow. On the west coast, beautiful. It's seasonal. It's nice. Chilly throughout the prairies. We'll talk about you next. Look at that. Yeah, wind gusts are certainly picking up, but the strongest winds are still up through northwestern Ontario. You saw Suzanne Leonard out there. We saw gusts maybe around 40 or 50 km in and around the Oakville area. At least that's what we're predicting. Right now we see 45 in St. Catharines. So, anywhere along the lakeshore is going to have no friction to get in the way of those winds. And right now winds are out of the southeast. So without that friction, you're going to get that really strong wind right on the lakeshore. Same deal for tomorrow. And I'm going to talk to Dr. Doug Gillum later on this afternoon, actually in about 20 minutes or so. Talk about where the strongest winds are going to be, not just today, but into the rest of your weekend, because everybody's concerned, what poor timing, right? Well, this is I won't call it a monster of a storm, but it's a big storm, certainly. The area of low pressure well up through northwestern Ontario, but this frontal boundary all the way down into the Gulf of Mexico. But it's the wraparound moisture that we're really concerned about, because once this first initial band of rain passes through southwestern Ontario, people might think, okay, well, we're done with that fall storm. No, you're not, because this has a counterclockwise spin to it, like any area of low pressure. And throughout the weekend, instead of it just moving off to the east like most normal storms do, this one's going to do what we call retrograde. So it's going to kind of go backwards. And with that, it's just going to constantly swirl and bring us more in, unsettled conditions, rain, wind through the weekend. For people through cottage country, through central Ontario and eastern Ontario, they're saying, what storm? Well, yeah, you haven't seen the rain really yet, but it's knocking on your door. This is the line of heavy rain showers. No embedded thunder showers at the time that we're seeing, but you saw on the radar there's a secondary line of rain moving through Michigan. So that's all going to be crossing in next. So it's going to be on and off rain really through the better part of your weekend. That's part one of the story. The other part, of course, are the winds. So tomorrow it's going to feel noticeably cooler with the wind. Today, not so bad. We have winds around 40 or 50 km, but it's 20 degrees outside. We can deal with that. Tomorrow it's going to be much cooler. It's going to feel like fall. Wawa, 11 degrees currently, 20 in Collingwood. So you can see where the cold front still has to work its way through the east. There's where the cold front paid a visit. Dryden, 9 degrees. Fort Frances, only at 4. Kenora, by the way, has seen some mixed precipitation today. There we go. It's cold enough up there. All of the north, of course, under the gun for some heavy snow. We could see 30 centimeters up through extreme parts of northern Ontario where there are winter storm watches in place. All right, we'll talk about the prairies and also the BC storm. It's another big rainmaker. We'll let you know how much you can still expect. Stay with us. Dr. Doug Gillum joins me to get into the analysis of the storm. My favorite thing to do, get into the nitty-gritty, right? Let's talk about why this is a fall storm. I mean, we've been throwing that around a while.
It's October.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay, I'm going to go home now. No, it is October, but obviously we know the temperatures are going to be dropping behind the cold front. Yes. What else makes this a fall storm? I mean, meteorologically speaking, why are we bringing in colder air now than the fact that it's fall? Why does that happen?
Well, we have the shorter days and the lower sun angle. So The northern latitudes are getting progressively colder. Meanwhile, it's still pretty warm in the south. The Gulf of Mexico is still very warm, so we're getting a stronger temperature contrast from north to south. So it's a season of transition, and we often see much more active weather. The fall is famous for its storms, and we had one in September. This is the biggest, most significant of the fall thus far, but it's certainly not the last.
I bet you're right on that one. I want to talk about that storm back in about 3 weeks ago or so.
Right.
We had what we call a lot of shear in the atmosphere. What that means, folks, for people that, different changes of speed and different directional changes with our winds as we go up in the atmosphere. We have similar kind of conditions today. Is there any threat for any rotating storms at all?
Well, we had some concern that we couldn't completely rule that out. Now that this first band of rain has come through, while we did heat up, the wind coming off Lake Ontario kept temperatures a little bit more in check than what we saw a few weeks ago. So now we have even less instability. So while you can't completely rule it out, it seems unlikely at this point that we're going to be worrying about any rotating storms.
Good news. Okay, let's talk about these wind gusts. I mean, is there a component to this time of year that intensifies these winds? I mean, winds are mixing down from aloft. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, we have stronger storm systems this time of year, stronger temperature contrast. We have stronger winds aloft, which can be more readily brought down to the surface when we have these steep temperature gradients, cold air aloft, warmer air at the surface. And so we're seeing strong gusty winds with the first band of rain that comes through, and we're going to see rather blustery conditions tomorrow behind the cold front.
I don't like that
What a
word.
reminder that it's October. It's going to feel more like Halloween.
Yeah, we're still a few more weeks from that, so I am not liking that. But you can certainly see that counterclockwise motion. Explain to viewers, Doug, why this is not going to be just moving out of the way anytime soon.
Well, this system is actually, as you've been mentioning, is going to retrograde. This system has occluded, so it's a well-mature storm, and the cold front is going to run into some blocking in the Atlantic Ocean, and the low is actually going to be tracking back to the northwest. So this system isn't going to just plow through into Atlantic Canada. It's really slowing down.
Even though we'd like it to. All right, more analysis coming up, plus a live look at the radar. That's next.